Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Main Event Podcast. You're here with just me, Aaron, today. This podcast, well, what we're going to do this season, a lot of new and exciting Champions League content. And you're probably like, Aaron, the Champions League doesn't start for another 30 days. What's going on? Why are you releasing a video? Well, what we wanted to do this season, just to keep you more up to date, was to do a weekly roundup of European football, all the teams involved in the Champions League, just so that one, it means that we can provide a little bit more content for you, let you know injuries when they happen, but also uh, we realize that the kind of preview episodes are a bit long. We want to condense that information, and one way that we can do that is to let you know with just snapshot information about all the teams involved in the Champions League uh, throughout each week. In terms of qualification, obviously, all the teams have not qualified yet. There's still some qualification matches going on. Close to rounding up, though. I think there's only one more round left, but after this one, and then the second leg of this one. So you'll be able to search them up. I'm not going to talk about them because there's a lot of teams that are quite hard to find on Google. um, so with obviously the information, we rely on kind of a few apps and Google for a lot of it. And so what we want to do is just to make sure that a lot of these people that we're going to search up in these playoff are not going to be in our teams. So it could bring you the teams that you're looking at, maybe some hidden gems in there. But we'll continue with the preview podcasts and the group previews. We've got a little bit of a twist in there, which is really, really exciting for the season ahead. So we wanted to start off with the Premier League because why not? It's the biggest league. The first up, Manchester City, because they won last season. They've had two games that we want to update you on. First one that we'll do is the Community Shield between Liverpool and Man City. Obviously, so what I do in these episodes, which I actually didn't explain, I'm going to prioritize Champions League clashes just so we know more so about how these teams are going to play when they face higher opposition. So for this game, we saw Liverpool pretty much have like a full, well, both teams had full strength squads, even though it was not the full season yet. This is a lot of people say that this is a glorified friendly. And so when it came down to the teams, we had Adrian in goal for Liverpool, which obviously we're not expecting, but that just comes from the preseason. So when it comes down to the starting front three we'll focus on Man City. We had Grealish, Haaland, and Mahrez, but we saw that Mahrez was substituted, and on came Foden, and with we saw that was a different starting 11 to when they faced West Ham United. So we're going to touch on the differences, but the back four remained the same for both games, and obviously this will have to do with Laporte injury. So Walker, Diaz, Ake, Cancelo. You don't need me to tell you who is the best defensive options there. De Bruyne, Rodri played in both, but Bernardo Silva and Mahrez was rotated. So that's something interesting to pay attention to. Obviously, we know Pep Roulette. And so Julian Alvarez, he came on, grabbed that second goal. Grabbed the first goal for Man City. But when it came to West Ham, they, like I said, had Foden and Gundogan starting, and this led to Haaland winning and scoring a penalty. So obviously in Champions League, that's going to be a little bit more points for him. And then also De Bruyne assisting Haaland. So Haaland is off the mark now. He had a few big chances against Liverpool. He's definitely someone who we had an eye on anyways when it came to Champions League football, especially on some of these group stage matches. And we just need to try and predict this rotation risk. And I think with the five substitutes in the Premier League, I think Haaland is a little bit safer, but we'll see when we have more data. But at this point, we can only really say and report on the two games in this instance, but the one game for a lot of these teams. So for Liverpool, uh, there was an injury in the last match to Thiago. We don't know what the extent of this injury is at the moment, but we need to make sure that he is okay in the long term because Liverpool really don't tick without him. But Milner came on and did a solid job. However, the biggest thing with this match, they did really, really well against Man City and we're really, really excited. A lot of people had Luis Diaz in their FPL teams, but for some reason against Fulham, when a team matched their intensity, Liverpool just didn't look at the races. So I don't know whether they were still a little bit stuck. I know they've got a few behind closed doors friendlies. So this is something that we'll have to pay attention to in terms of rotation of the squad and stuff like that. But the starting 11 was very, very similar for both games. The only difference was Adrian and Alisson in goal. When it came to Fulham, though, great performance by Fulham. Welcome back to the Premier League. But Liverpool just didn't look at the races. I think something that changed both games was when Darwin Núñez came on, and obviously we saw the impact that he made against Fulham, but also against Liverpool as against Man City as well. He came on and scored as well. So that's 2 goals and 2 appearances for him. And so we need to pay attention to that because the style of play really changes when he's on. Obviously, a very different striker of Firmino. So let's pay attention to that. Alexander Arnold got on the score sheet outside the box goal, and it just reminded us why we need him. But Fulham also highlighted why we don't feel confident too much with him as well. Mitrovic having that free header. So really interesting to kind of see what happens with Alexander Arnold in terms of that. But if for his attacking output and also his ball recovery points, he's pretty much nailed in a lot of people's teams. The biggest thing is obviously the schoolboy error by Van Dijk. A lot of people don't think it was a penalty. Match of the Day did a really good job of highlighting that it was knee-to-knee collision in slow motion. So definitely recommend checking out that. We'll move on with these. So Chelsea, obviously there's a bit of a commotion about Chelsea currently, and just in terms of a lot of controversy about the owner, and obviously that Chelsea are not strangers to that. They know kind of controversy around owners and stuff like that. But this is in terms of the owner not knowing what he's doing, not able to close out deals. However, they still beat Everton 1-0, clean sheet. Thank you. We'll take that. Koulibaly, Silva, and Azpilicueta started in defence. Obviously, they just signed Cucurella for 60-ish million. We don't know whether he's going to play in place of Ben Chilwell yet, who welcome back to the team for him. I think he'll be really, really good. We don't know kind of that thing, but Chelsea have always had that excess amount of centre backs because Thiago Silva can't always stay fit for the rest of the season. So it's really important that they have a few extra. So the fact that Cucurella can play in both left wing back and centre back is a big, big plus for them. Reece James looked really, really solid. So obviously we need to pay attention to him. But in terms of Sterling, Raheem Sterling, he obviously had the disallowed goal, but he looked sharp. And I think the amount of game time, it'll be really interesting to see what price he's at in Champions League. But we definitely need to pay attention to him and also the impact that has on Havertz as well. Not that a lot of people had Havertz in their team, but Sterling definitely, as this team gels, could be a great force. But I definitely think they do need a striker, and I heard that there's links to Aubameyang, so we'll pay attention to that. I think the biggest one is obviously we'll be talking about Tottenham on this podcast this season, and they started off their season great. Obviously, the 36 laps length of the field has worked out well so far. winning 4-1 against Southampton. Ryan Sessegnon, Eric Dyer getting on the score sheet. Kulusevski having a great match. I think a big thing is that this team is really, really wing back dominant, and that's exactly what Antonio Conte's matches were like with Inter Milan and also with Chelsea as well. Obviously, Marcus Alonso and Victor Moses turned into great assets when they were playing under Conte's system. So we need to pay attention to which wing backs will be starting. If they are an early kickoff on any of these days and we know who is starting, we get the starting lineup information, the wing backs are definitely worth investment. Obviously, because there is the rotation, they might be a little bit cheaper as well. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where they fall into and what group they are in, because a lot goes through the wing backs, even though they will probably most likely be substituted at some point in every match. But I don't think we have too much to worry about with them so far. The only thing I would say is that I think they're strong enough to get out the group. Obviously, we don't know the group yet, but Antonio Conte and the Champions League just don't seem to mesh. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of what group they fall into and how that plays out in terms of rotation and Harry Kane and Son doing well in Europe, which they always seem to do. Harry Kane does really, really well in Europe. So two leagues haven't started yet. So the next after the Premier League, we focus on the rest of the big five leagues. The Italian Serie A and Spanish La Liga don't start till next week. So we don't have to panic too much about that. They'll still have a few friendlies and stuff. So they'll be in the episodes next week. However, we're going to start next with Germany because there was two all Champions League clashes. They have 5 teams in the Champions League this year. So we'll definitely have to be covering Bundesliga in a little bit more detail. The first one, Eintracht Frankfurt, hosting Bayern Munich and losing 6-1. A lot of people were interested in this match. Obviously, Sadio Mane making his debut, who obviously scored. But Bayern Munich just, it's too easy for them at this point in the Bundesliga. It's like, come on, like someone step up and challenge them. But let's talk through the goal scorers. So Kimmich, free kick. I couldn't even see where the goal was on the footage. Obviously, I don't know whether it was a flare or fog, but it cleared up quite quick. So I'm guessing it was like a flare or something. But Bayern Munich, honestly, just dominant. Within 5 minutes, Kimmich, free kick, outside the obviously outside the box, but the points would have counted for an out of the box goal. Kimmich, it'll be interesting to see whether he's classed as a defender again this season, or whether they finally put him in the right position, which is midfield, because he's not played in defense for a long time now. They played a 4-4-2, which I found quite interesting. With Gnabry and Mane up front, but I think the biggest thing that we need to look at is the fact that Musiala started, played all 90 minutes and scored twice. We'll see what his price is because he could be a great option this season. Definitely something to pay attention to. But I do not think that this team is playing its preferred 11 according to Nagelsmann just yet. The De Ligt came off the bench, and also Leroy Sané hasn't been playing as well. I'm pretty sure that they would want Gravenberch playing instead of Sabitzer. So really, really interesting to see what happens in terms of this squad. But it seems to be coping really, really well, even without Lewandowski in it. So Sadio Mane playing as a striker as well. We know he did that a few times with Liverpool, especially when Luis Diaz came in later in the season. So if this is his preferred position, he could still be priced as a midfielder, which also could be a great option. But we'll have to see for that one. Eintracht Frankfurt ended up scoring as well. Kouliman Moani. That's just Manuel Neuer madness. Like, I don't know what he thinks sometimes, and it always puts me off Bayern Munich assets. Like, there's always a mistake somewhere in there. So these would be great options. Obviously, Pavard scoring, and Alphonso Davies. They always get priced way too high for the amount of clean sheets that they give. So They don't fill me with confidence. And this goal that Eintracht Frankfurt scored isn't much difference, but honestly, it was dominant. Frankfurt only had 36% possession, just not good at all. And I think something that will be interesting to note as well is that Frankfurt, because they won the Europa League, they'll be in pot one. So they're going to be technically one of the stronger teams in their pot. So that's going to be really, really interesting when we get kind of like a, a group where a lot of people are similar skill level. That's going to be really, really interesting to see who they're paired with. But however, if like a team like Tottenham or someone who's not going to be pot one, Liverpool, gets paired up with these, uh, it's going to make it really interesting that we're going to make these teams essentially be pot one. The other all Champions League clash in this over this weekend in the Bundesliga was Dortmund winning 1-0 against Bayer Leverkusen, and uh, Royce helps if I could speak. Royce was the goal scorer, but something that surprised me was the defensive display of Dortmund. They looked just a lot more solid, a lot more in control because Frankfurt had the majority of possession. They had similar shots, but we wouldn't expect anything less of Dortmund to not have as many shots as the opposition. But Leverkusen, they had the ball for a lengthy spells in this over this game, but Dortmund stayed firm, especially taking the lead in the 10th minute, and then just managed to hold that very good start for them. So it'll be interesting to with a little bit more data, and once these teams clash, because not a lot of teams keep clean sheets this early in the season as the defense gels, but the team hasn't changed too much. I think it's important to note that Adeyemi started on the right wing instead of up front that he used to start for Salzburg. I believe sometimes he played on the right wing as well. But just something to note that he is starting, however, he was substituted, and I'm guessing that's just obviously with the system and in different leagues and stuff like that. But overall, it was a really, really good performance in terms of the last remaining, obviously with Leverkusen dominated the ball, and I think it was just trying to create that a big chance. However, when it comes to their assets, obviously the transfer window's not closed yet, but I have heard rumors that they are looking to bring in more attacking players. So we'll see how that goes. Leipzig drew 1-1 with Stuttgart. And Kunku, who else scored in the 8th minute. I think something that was interesting with this match is that Leipzig dominated the game, 68% possession, 28 shots, and it was 9 on target. So Stuttgart really, really stood firm. So Leipzig are that attacking outlet that we knew that they were. When it came to their team, it's the usual 3-4-1-2 is how it's displayed on Google and OneFootball. But Nkunku and Andre Silva started up front with Olmo behind. They've got a few different changes, but it's important that we kind of look at with more data, see who is playing. But something that I found interesting was Henriks. Hopefully I pronounced that right. He's been a right wing back predominantly, but he's been moved into defensive midfield throughout preseason and this game. So it'll be interesting to kind of see if he still plays there, because he was always kind of like a reasonably priced kind of player. But I think it's probably because the likes of Forsberg and Schlabbersley, butchered that honestly. It's early. It's early. But yeah, it shows that they are maybe not back to full fitness yet. So they'll definitely come in and make their mark. Something that I forgot to mention as well, that Leverkusen, Hidriki had. I think that's going to be the funniest part about these episodes, to be honest, is me trying to pronounce all these names, especially teams that we've not heard of before. But he got red carded near the end of the match. So it'll be interesting to see how Leverkusen do moving forward in terms of defensive displays when their first choice keeper uh, isn't playing. So next we have the French Ligue 1. So I love these pronunciations, honestly. They went full French there. Paris Saint-Germain winning 5-0 away from home to Clermont Foot. Probably didn't pronounce that right either. I think these is going to be the next kind of influx of memes from that newsreader who just can't pronounce any of these names. It's going to be like this for me as well. So at least I'm providing a little bit of comedy. What I lack in football analysis, I give you in mispronunciations. So I think the biggest thing to note with Paris Saint-Germain and something for us to pay attention to is a lot of French journalists, especially I've been listening recently to Julien Laurent, who massive PSG fan, but he said that Neymar just looks a different animal this season. He thinks that it's because of the World Cup mid-season, so it'll be interesting to see if Neymar can stay injury-free because he normally gets injured around that time. So I wonder if he'll delay his scheduled injury for this, but he looks just a different beast according to a lot of journalists. So that's going to be really important. Obviously, with Brazil being one of the favorites for the World Cup, as they always are. But he scored a goal, 9th minute, and then got 3 assists. Messi scored twice. Messi's assist for Neymar, if you've not seen it, absolute magic. But Messi starting to get on the score sheet. I think he's very close to equaling his goal tally already from last season. A little bit of exaggeration there. But the other goal scorers, Hakimi and Marquinhos, I don't have to tell you how good assets they are, but a clean sheet goals for them that would have equaled a lot of points. But we need to pay attention to Neymar. Mbappe was ruled out injured for this match, but it's only a minor injury. It's an abductor problem, so we'll be able to kind of see him potentially next week, maybe even the week after. But to see how Neymar does once Mbappe is back. But apparently he looks very focused, and that's the Neymar that we thought. However, it's the French league. No disrespect intended, but as discussed with this next team, it makes certain players look unreal. Not to say that Neymar was a bad player to start with, but there's a difference in class when Neymar goes missing in these big Champions League matches compared to playing Clermont Foot. Going on to Marseille, so they won quite comfortably 4-1, I believe. And the biggest thing with Marseille was that Nuno Tavares, who Arsenal have just let go, a couple of Arsenal players, ex-Arsenal players in this match. He scored a good goal as well. So I think that goes back to my point about the French league. We can't judge it totally on just French league form. So that's why these all Champions League clashes will be very important in the French league. So when it is Marseille versus PSG, we really need to look at how Neymar performs in them matches, and whether it's just the Mbappe show when it comes down to it. Something to note as well, that Luis Suarez, not the one that we all knew. I had to double check. I was like, I don't remember him going there. But Luis Suarez scored twice coming off the bench. He's a young, I think he's a new signing. But Marseille looked really, really solid when he came on. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see what role he takes, whether he can get that starting job. Because they have Milik, I don't think that Suarez is going to be priced at the not the premium forward, but the starting forward. So he could be a good enabler for the group stage, I believe. But 2 goals coming off the bench within 15 minutes, so it looks like a good option there. And that's it currently for the French league. More teams might join with qualification, so we'll keep an eye out on that. All right, and now we do quick fire in terms of the rest of the world, in terms of what countries have Champions League teams qualified already, but have not uh, are not part of the big five leagues. We'll start off with Scotland. So Celtic have automatically qualified for the Champions League. So it's been a while since we've talked about them. Well, we've not talked about them in the podcast, but it'll be good to see them back in European competition. So they've played 2 games into the Scottish Premier League so far. They won both games, a 2-0 win and 3-1 win. We expect nothing less in the Scottish Premier League. The biggest indicators for them is when they play Rangers and stuff like that. So in terms of this match, they've got a few new signings. But their main striker is Furuhashi, and he got on the score sheet for them. Someone who I'm quite interested that we could see is Abada, who's an Israeli footballer, 20-year-old, but he was very, very direct when I watched the highlights. And Celtic always seem to pull off some crazy result in the Champions League. I remember them beating Barcelona, etc. And so even though they are the underdogs, they're just the atmosphere that they get in their stadium. It'll be interesting to see what surprise they'll pull off this season. They definitely do it every single time. So it'll be interesting to see. And Vada could have a role in that, even if he is like a 5 million midfielder. He came off the bench and scored. So looks very, very decent for a young player. So obviously, we've got it. I might as well just say this for the rest of the season. This is all asterisks. This is all dependent on their league strength. But that's why we focus on the top 5 teams. We're not going. We're just trying to look for some budget players. So I'm just going to say that for the rest of the season now. So don't have to say it every video. The next one we're going to go to is Austria. We're going to go to Salzburg. They've are 3 games into their season. They've won twice and lost once. With Salzburg, we're always kind of looking for who is the next Haaland, who is the next Adeyemi, who is that cheap enabler that's going to get us loads of points. And so when we've kind of had a look at their results, obviously they had that almost the surprise defeat in the second game, but when it comes to their performances and their players, obviously there's a few like Cabaldo and Okafor that we recognize, but they've got a new striker, well, new for me anyways, Fernando. So he scored in both their wins, and so that would be interesting to see how he kind of forms with more data, but currently averaging a goal every other game. So obviously we can say stats like that and it sounds really impressive, but when it's such a small sample size, then we can't really look too much into it so far. So we've still got a month. We've still got a month left before the Champions League starts. So we'll see how Fernando does, and he might be a good option for our third striker spot. The next one is going to go to the Eredivisie. We're going to go to the Netherlands, in which Ajax won 3-2. Obviously, we know Ajax every season, their main players get bidded on. There's still talks with what's going to happen to Anthony. We'll see how that goes, but still getting the job done. I think the biggest thing to look at here is one, the defense is not as solid, but that's because every single season someone gets signed. So obviously Mazraoui got signed by Bayern Munich this season, and one of the centre backs left as well. However, the new right back has fitted in just nicely. I'll butcher his name, but I think it's Wrench. Either way, their new right back, Wrench, he was on the score sheet. So and looked really, really attacking. You'd expect nothing less. So he might be an option. It'll be interesting to see how he's priced at, because Ajax defenders do really well just with their attacking returns. Thank you, Tagliafico. And then the last team that we have that's definitely qualified for the Champions League so far is Shakhtar Donetsk. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy on kind of what's going to happen to them in the Champions League. But the head of the Ukrainian Premier League has said that the season will go ahead. So fair play to them. Honestly, I can't even imagine being in that situation. They played a friendly yesterday, lost 5-0 to Roma, but obviously there's that clause in the contract of Ukrainian players where they can leave for a year with no like kind of transfer fees or anything. So obviously we know that a few of the Premier League players have signed, but lost 5-0. But according to Ukrainian Premier League president, the season is going to go ahead behind closed doors and with air raid shelters. So I can't imagine how Shakhtar are going to do this year in the Champions League. No disrespect, like nothing against them. Obviously with extenuating circumstances with country invasions. But all the other teams have not qualified yet. But that was a quick run through in terms of each of the teams of the five leagues. These will become a little bit shorter, but also we can then start to identify trends before the preview shows. So definitely subscribe if you haven't already to make sure you don't miss any of these videos. We'll be back next week in terms of bringing you back the highlights of European football, where a lot of these leagues are going to start, Serie A and La Liga. We'll be able to look at their teams. But if there is anything that you want us to go through that would help you out more specifically, rather than me just reading out the results, let me know in the comments, and make sure to leave a like on the video if you liked it. But bring on the Champions League, and football is back, so it's glorious. Hope you all have a good week, and I shall see you next week.